Trans-dimensional beings watch you poop. Welcome to TruthDuel Official. In this video, you'll learn about spatial dimensions and how they might explain paranormal phenomena. You'll want to stick around till the end of this video to learn how to avoid being haunted by a fourth dimensional entity. But first, I am your host, Misinformation. If you like this channel, make sure to subscribe to receive more great paranormal speculation, misinformation analysis, and other sentiments and ramblings that please and amuse us. And become a truth dueler. Because only you can slay misinformation at its source. Get our app on TruthDuel.com. If you spend your short and finite time on this earth endlessly scrolling through the digital abyss known as TikTok, you may have seen this video by user Tabees.
This two-dimensional creature has locked some precious gems away in a safe. She's checked the safe from every angle and is sure that no one will be able to break in without a key. But she hasn't taken into account the idea that a three-dimensional creature, such as myself, might be peering in from above. She doesn't even know the concept of above. I could steal these gems without a key and without damaging the safe, and she would have no idea how they were taken. But we should keep an eye out for ourselves. A four-dimensional creature could steal from our safes without a key, could take the yolk from an egg without breaking the shell, appear in a closed room, or see inside of our brains. The fourth dimension is perpendicular to all of our normal 3D space directions, and we have no walls up against that direction.
Now wait a minute. Things appearing at random, unexplained occurrences, seemingly impossible scenarios. These sound like tired cliches from Paranormal Activity. Besides, it would be easier to believe that those sounds in the night are just the house settling. That lady who claims she saw an angel simply forgot to take her meds that morning. That the fourth dimension is just some vague brain teaser for math nerds. It couldn't possibly be a home for sentient beings, could it? To understand why math nerds, formerly known as physicists, are puzzled by the fourth dimension, we need to understand the basics of dimensions. There are many definitions of the word dimension, but you can think of it as a fundamental physical measurement. Physicists argue about how many possible dimensions there are, but we are going to focus on the first four. The first dimension is moving side to side, a line. The second dimension is moving up and down, a square. The third dimension is moving backwards and forwards, a cube. Finally, the fourth dimension is moving inside and outside, a tesseract. The cruel joke of the universe is that you cannot directly perceive higher dimensions. You can only perceive their shadows. If a 3D sphere passed through the second dimension, the 2D creature would see a small circle growing and then shrinking until it mysteriously vanished from existence.
Recall that when the sphere first visited the second dimension, he looked like a series of circles that started as a point when he touched flatland, grew bigger until he was halfway through, and then shrank smaller again.
For us measly 3D beings, we cannot move outside of the universe, so anything that could would suddenly appear and then vanish. Let's return to an earlier word, tesseract. A tesseract is the three-dimensional shadow of a four-dimensional object. Again, this is best explained by thinking about the relationship between 3D objects and 2D shadows.
Let's take a look at the shadow of a 3D cube. First, note the two squares. One is smaller than the other because of perspective, making further objects appear smaller. But if you follow the small square, you'll see that it moves to the other side, before eventually moving to the front of the cube and becoming the big square. Now watch the tesseract again. The little cube, because of 4D perspective, when rotated to be closer, becomes bigger, while the big cube rotates to be smaller. So just like in a 3D cube, where the big and little squares switch places, in a 4D cube, the big and little cubes will switch places.
Similarly, we can think about how a 4D being sees our third dimension by thinking about the relationship between the second and third dimensions.
One of the first things you would notice if you looked in a 4D space is that you would see the world as a 3D shape, in a similar way to how you view a 3D world and can put it onto a 2D picture. But there's one catch. You can see all the sides of a shape. Remember how if you were to put a circle in a 2D box, you could still see it looking down from above in 3D? Well, now in 4D, you can see every side of the 3D box when looking down on it, including seeing the ball inside. Are you freaked out yet?
You may wonder, how would a 4D creature interact with our world? If a 4D being can add or remove objects to our universe instantaneously, could this explain a strange phenomenon like the Mandela effect? Again, Tabise provides an interesting thought experiment.
You're right, I shouldn't have stolen from a two-dimensional creature. I'm going to put these gems back in the safe. But I would like to leave some evidence of my presence. The 2D creature is outside at the moment and is wearing a cap. If I were to pick it up and rotate it in the third dimension and then place it back, that might be enough of a clue that I've visited. No one in the second dimension could have done this because it required a movement in the third dimension, and no one in 2D will ever be able to rotate it back to normal. So the backwards cap might just be more valuable than any of the gems because it is evidence of a higher dimension.
If a 4D creature were to alter our universe, would we understand this as evidence of another spatial dimension? Or would we rush to explain the alteration as a trick of our minds, as a societal lapse in memory, rather than tampering from outside our universe? Occam's razor says the former is more likely, but that doesn't necessarily eliminate the latter. So, supposing that it is the latter, how would we know? Where would we begin looking for evidence of fourth-dimensional meddling? Could paranormal entities, things that people call ghosts or demons or even angels, have a scientific explanation? Our TruthDuel investigative reporters looked into a specific haunting cause to see if the claims made fall into the realm of superstition or just regular old stition, whatever that means. The Moffit family experienced strange and terrifying phenomena in their Southern California home between 1987 and 1992. There appeared to be a poltergeist following them, clawing marks into the walls and tearing the bed to shreds. It had a particular hatred for Lee, the mother of the family, and would often launch knives across the room at her, but it didn't begin like that. In the beginning, Deborah, Lee's daughter-in-law, noticed objects mysteriously disappearing around the house, only to randomly appear later. She would find pictures turned around, doors being open or shut, and the television flipping through channels where no one else was in the room. This is all pretty standard haunting activity, and none of it is enough evidence to prove the paranormal. However, you might also remember that these are all easy actions for a four-dimensional being to take, since they have an extra spatial dimension to move through. Walls and doors are no obstacle to them and their mischief. Despite all the psychics and priests called to the house, the Moffit family would continue to return home only to find all their cabinets shattered, all their clothes torn up. They wondered why this entity was targeting them, and you might be wondering that too. Even if there are 4D creatures, why would they cause people such harm? Even the geniuses behind TruthDuel can't give you a perfect answer to this question. If these entities exist, then their motives might be as varied as the motives each human being has. Some might be altruistic and peaceful, while others may simply enjoy ruining people's lives, like the entity haunting the Moffit family. Most probably don't care about humanity and live their lives in a realm beyond the farthest reaches of our teeny tiny minds. However, let's do a short thought experiment. Let's return to comparing the 3D world with the 2D world, like we've done before in this video. How do most of us treat 2D beings? Well, if you're Tabise, you steal their gems and turn their hats backwards. Harmless enough, but this is still a little scary for the 2D creature. I mean, wouldn't you be unnerved if your safe was empty and your hat was manipulated into a new spatial dimension? When we consider all of the 2D creatures in our world, most of them live pretty shitty lives. The artists who draw comic books and manga are constantly putting their characters into violent and terrifying scenarios. If I were a 2D creature, I would beg the 3D gods to spare me from the wrath of George R.R. Martin. Do 4D beings manipulate our lives? Not because they care about 3D beings, but because they are creating stories for other 4D beings. Is the third dimension just a giant sandbox for 4D authors? Should we apologize to our 2D friends for the trauma we put them through, just so we can say, wow, this is a really cool plot twist? Don't worry too much, dear viewers. Remember, I said that some 4D beings could be altruistic. Perhaps the stories people tell about divine advice or angelic help are actually stories about 4D beings who took time out of their busy, multi-dimensional lives to help a little 3D creature along. After all, Tabis did put the gems back into the safe. Misinformation wishes you well and reminds you to be kind to your 2D friends. P.S. The amount of spatial dimensions may go beyond 3, 4, or even 5. There may be as many as 11 spatial dimensions.
M theory, which unifies all the superstring theories, says that our universe is made up of 3 spatial dimensions that we are all familiar with, 1 time dimension, and 6 more small spatial dimensions, according to the string theory.
Until next time, make sure to like our video, subscribe to our channel, and become a Truth Dueler, or TruthDuel will haunt you.